Welcome, everyone. My guest today is Lead Analyst Logan Mohtashami to talk about the $5,000 checks that consumers might be getting and how that affects housing demand and mortgage rates. Logan, welcome back to the podcast.
It is wonderful to be here. Happy Friday, Sarah.
Happy Friday, although this goes live on Monday, and this is the week that we have our Housing Economics Summit. Super excited about that.
Yes. Talk about, oh my God, talk about the timing of everything. It's not just the spring season, getting ready for everything about that. All the news just in the last 7 to 10 days. I know I'm changing up my entire presentation for this because I think the amount of questions that I'm getting, at least, in retrospect to all the news out there, it's not shocking that this is happening.
No, it's not. Well, let's get into some of that news. So just yesterday on the podcast, we talked about how mass federal layoffs could affect mortgage rates. And your point there was like taking money out of the system. What does that look like? Today, one of our topics is putting money back in the system or back for consumers. So we're going to talk about the DOGE plan to give $5,000 to every American, which sounds like a stimulus plan. Yeah.
It is weird for me to be in alliance with the anti-central bank movement and saying like, no checks. Like when did this, how did this all come? At first I thought it was a joke. I thought somebody was just joking, because $5,000, I mean, a lot of drama was over the, $1,200 checks or whatever, but, I don't know how to make sense of that. I mean, I know what the talking point is. The talking point is that this money was being spent by the government and we're saving the waste. And because we're saving the waste, we're going to give it to you, the consumer, and the deficit doesn't go down. I mean, not that any of these things would really majorly impact the deficit, but the consumer gets it at $5,000. Now, a $5,000 check for everyone, that's like real money. I mean, think about everyone's insurance problems for 1 year.
Right.
If you got a $5,000 check, that can cover a good chunk of insurance and any other extra housing costs that you would have. But it doesn't make sense to me.
So like it doesn't make sense to you from a standpoint of like, what does that do to the economy?
So this goes into a bigger discussion. Elon Musk said that we're going broke. So if we're going broke, you have to reduce the deficit. If you're talking about reducing the deficit, then you save money by spending less. Right. And that also creates lower aggregate demand. That's what Kevin Hassett, the White House economics person. But if you take that money, give it to the consumer, that's what we've seen. You get an injection of money into the bank accounts. And boy, the income data starts to pop up at one time. The savings rate pops up. We're going to have a massive spike in the savings rate if that happens. And there's more money in the system for people to spend on. So it does you.
So what's the downside? I don't understand why you'd be against that.
But I mean, if you're talking about lowering the deficit, then whatever you save and you withdraw money, that's fine. But if you're injecting money into the system again, then you're not doing anything to the deficit, and now you're boosting demand, which you're taking away from we want to create higher labor supply and aggregate demand. So I just know, where did that come from? How do you even come up with the 5,000 number? Right? That's much more than the stimulus or the checks given during COVID. So I don't know. I don't know what to make of that. I honestly thought it was a joke. And then it's getting talked about. So the talk is, a lot of people say, well, this is going to be really inflationary. And the talking point is that, well, the government was spending this, which the consumer should. So with the unemployment rate at 4%, that doesn't necessarily, we don't need an injection, but, and we have confusing talking points now from, we want higher labor supply, lower aggregate demand to, oh, we're saving money, the deficit, we need to save America before it goes broke. Oh, listen, we're just going to give everyone checks. And whatever money we save, don't worry about the deficit. We're just so.
That's a very confusing message.
It's Sarah, what do I always say about politics? Politics is the word itself. Politics, many blood-sucking parasites. I mean, in the world of economics and numbers, we just deal with the numbers and give it to us. But now, if you're asking me to do political economic theory, this one is iffy.
Well, let's talk about, because yesterday we drew a line between, like, if you take money out of the system, that could be good for mortgage rates. Let's talk about what a stimulus, does it have any effect on, I mean, what does this do to inflation? What does this do to the overall goal that we have as an industry to see lower rates, which also seems like a goal of the Trump administration?
If you're serious about putting tariffs into play and you're worried about the hit to the consumer, then giving stimulus is something. Governor California Gavin Newsom talked about giving checks out to people because of higher energy costs, right? Something like that. So in theory, if you're going to do a tariff and the one-time price adjustments and you're worried about, well, is it going to hit consumption? Then giving a stimulus check could offset that one-time hit cost. But that's, again, if the goal was to bring inflation down, you don't do anything stimulative, right? In any kind of nature, right? The job is to always, if you really wanted to fight inflation, you take money out of the system. That's an effective way. Or you raise taxes, and nobody's raising taxes on anyone. So it doesn't make sense. I mean, I'm sure some people are going to love it. I mean, who wouldn't love $5,000 into their bank account?
It's a
right
popular
away.
thing to do, but I do wonder, like, then what does that mean about mortgage rates? Because that one-time stimulus of $5,000 is, I mean, maybe it helps somebody buy a house, but it doesn't seem like affordability. It'll help, a lot of things, but I don't know that it helps affordability.
My first thought is that anybody that had problems paying or insurance, that $5,000, goes a long way for covering an insurance increase. So I don't know. I'll if it does actually happen, then I'll run some numbers on everything. But it's just, everything's a little bit weird now on the messages. We want the 10-year yield to go lower. We want to create higher labor supply. We want to lower aggregate demand. We're cutting government spending. We're firing workers. Oh, by the way, everyone's going to get $5,000 checks. So, I mean, the things were lining up all of until then this came. And then it could kind of make sense if you really thought you're going to go with like tariffs and everything, and you get the one-time price adjustments on universal tariffs and everything kind of goes up. But it just, I don't know, something went wrong on like the line messaging here. So again, when it's politics, it's different because you have to, appease the voters or something to that nature.
No, it's a great point. Well, so we will stick a pin in that and come back to it if and when it passes and what that looks like. But that was my first thought, was like, wait, what does that do to mortgage rates? Because we were, just yesterday we talked about this could be a path to lower mortgage rates. So we'll have to keep an eye on that. Okay, more news, existing home sales.
Yeah, existing home sales fell. I think everyone was anticipating that. Our weekly pending contract data that was showing good growth against 2022 and 2023 data toward the end of the year. When rates started to rise, that growth rate started to slow, and then it went negative. And it's been slightly negative year over year versus the 2024 data, slightly positive versus 2023. So here we are again. It's remarkable. We are so consistent since the end of 2022. Whenever rates fall, demand picks up by a couple 100,000, and then rates rise and demand fades a couple 100,000. So here we are again. We were kind of in the low to mid 380 or kind of 380,000, 390 around there, and then rates fell. Existing home sales went up a couple 100,000, and we're still above 4 million. But we look at our pending contracts, we're slightly down year over year. It's the same actual things. And if you look at it, it just kind of bounces back and forth, and we're just at this 4 million level. And for those that don't know, the 4 million existing home sales level is a very key point for a lot of my housing economic work for a long time. Even when we first started writing about this during COVID, that is just really rare to be, under 4 million on the monthly prints. We've never had anything crash really under 4 million. But whenever rates go down, demand picks up, but then rates rise and then demand fades.
That is our cycle. So here we are. I mean, we're at the end of February. So we are right here in the spring home buying season. What are you seeing that way?
So nothing is, the purchase application data is basically flat for this year between negative prints and positive prints. The year over year data is holding up a little bit better because what happened last year is that rates actually went higher last year. We were heading towards 7.5%. Purchase application data last year when rates were between 6.75 to 7.5% had 14 negative prints, 2 flat prints, 2 positive prints. And then rates started to go lower starting kind of the summer timeframe. Now it's just basically, it's gone really nowhere. We're kind of flattish on the negative positive data. The year over year data is holding up a little bit better just because, when rates went to 7.5% last year, the demand got hit a little bit harder. So we're not doing anything right in this. And even last year, we didn't see like big volume declines in existing home sales. We're not seeing the 500,000 to 1 million to 1.5 million downshift in home sales, but you could clearly see there is no path of growth when rates increase. And this is why all the talking points was Treasury beset. We want a lower 10-year yield, right? We want mortgage rates to go down. Kevin Hassett, we want to create lower, aggregate demand and higher labor supply. If we're defeating inflation, then the 10-year yield will go down in that light. So it's kind of the same story. It really is very consistent how just getting down towards 6% gives us a little bit of demand. And then after that, when rates rise, here we are again. Of course, the spreads are better this year, and mortgage rates are. It's Friday. We had some soft economic data, consumer sentiment stuff. So the 10-year yield fell about like 4.46 the last time I checked. So mortgage rates are sub 7% again. But like I said, I've only seen housing data get better when mortgage rates head down towards 6%. The builders have 2019 existing or 2019 new home sales still. But they live in a sub 6% mortgage world for some time. So there's a huge gap between the existing home sales market and the new home sales market. But for the existing home sales market, it only tends to get better when rates head down towards 6%.
We need lower rates. Don't know how we get there. No one knows exactly how we get there.
No, the one interesting aspect is total active inventory grew just a little bit. This will probably be the low point. This is the NAR's inventory data, which is a little bit different than ours, but it's about 1.18 million. Again, historically speaking, going back to the early 1980s, 2 to 2.5 million is normal. Active inventory. 2007 was 4 million. So we're almost at 1.2 million. Inventories should be growing year over year. See, the one benefit of higher mortgage rates is that it's allowing the active inventory data to grow. So my own personal bias is that that's a positive for the housing market. You can't have a functioning housing market with where inventory was, especially in 2020 to 2022. Even 2023 still wasn't a functioning housing market. But we had inventory growth in 2024, healthy. We're going to get probably another year, unless rates fall dramatically. We should have another year of positive inventory growth. We're working our way back to normal. But yeah, I think it was glaring for a lot of people just to see that, whoa, we're still down here. And this is going to be the fourth calendar year of the lowest home sales ever. But there's so many moving parts with politics now with the economy that it's just, I have to bring the political economic theory out, and I just hate it. I hate doing that. But this is just the world we live in at this stage.
It really is. So you'll be working on the tracker this weekend, and we had somebody write in and say, you always talk about the tracker, but I don't know where to find it. So for those of you who want to find it, you go to HousingWire.com and go to the housing market tab. There is a drop down menu, housing market, and it's on that page. And we keep that updated. You can see all of them. There's like a scrolling thing. You can hit on the most recent one and then look at the other ones as well. That's kind of how we're working on a way to make it even more visible. But right now it's like 2 clicks. So you can find it there. Logan puts it on his social regularly, is always pushing it out. So,
and again, the tracker was designed because it's better for everyone to kind of be on the same page on real-time data, and a little bit of context of where we are. And again, so many of I would say the price crash, or it's 2025 now. I think the home prices were up 4.8% year over year in the NAR report. I think there's a lot of confusion on the prices falling volume crowd, where if prices crash or if sales crash, prices will follow that. The history of that isn't very good. And again, 2008 to 12, or the period of 2007 to 11 was such a unique anomaly event because you had so much distressed sellers into an underwater marketplace with credit breaking, with underwater mortgages. And this was happening years before the recession. Then the recession happened, and then the credit markets got tighter because Freddie Fannie had to go in conservative. There was all these things that were happening all at once, but it took years of building up. It's not the case now. And now that we're in 2025, and now I think even some of my housing crash friends are like looking at the price year. They're like, "What's going on?" I say, guys, just listen. Think ebbs and flows with pricing. Not everything has to be a big national home price crash. If you think of ebbs and flows, the tracker is designed to show you the equilibrium of supply and demand economics. And it's beautiful because it's just national data out there for everyone to read, and everyone gets on the same page, right? And I always stress this, that the biggest change and the biggest difference now than back then was new listings data was running at 250 to 400,000 per week for years. We're talking
crazy.
years and years and years of accelerated new listings. These are sellers that weren't going to be home buyers, distressed sellers, underwater mortgage. I mean, there was such a unique backdrop. And I'm hoping this year that I'm right. Last year I was wrong. I thought we would get a minimum 80,000. 80 to 110,000 was normal. We did that in 2020.
Right?
Yeah, new listings. We did that in 2020, 2021. In 2022, we even, actually in 2021 and 2022, we were able to do that. 2022 got to a little bit above 90,000. It's just that 2023 and 2024 were the 2 lowest new listings data ever. Most sellers are home buyers. That'll be a positive. And we get that back to normal. And I think that's why the tracker is created, for everybody to sit on the same page. And then once you read it week after week after week after week, then it's like, okay, it kind of makes sense now, right? Everything that happened from 2020, 2021, 2022, 2023, 2024, going into 20, it all starts to make sense if everybody works on the same kind of data line. Because, and then if people start doing like crazy economic theory stuff, and it just hasn't happened, right? So our job is to teach this. And I always like to bring this back to, a lot of people tell me, well, if unemployment happens or job losses and home prices are going to crash nationally, we have over 80 years of data on this post-World War II. If recessions and job losses led to nominal home price crashes, then it wasn't a very effective model, because we've never saw it in multiple recessions post-World War II.
Right.
It only happened in one period of time where the credit markets for housing were breaking years before the recession happened. That's why I like to do those foreclosure bankruptcy charts and show what it looked like from 2005 to 2008, right? And then you actually peaked around the 2008 to 10 levels. We didn't really increase foreclosures and bankruptcies much from that. So hopefully the job is to teach so everybody has a kind of idea. Because if you never studied housing economics, you'd be completely lost. You're absolutely lost. But the more and more I do this, the more I realize, wow, the history of housing economics, just a lot of people didn't know. And once you get to see the data, then it starts to make a little bit more sense.
I totally agree. And you track purchase apps and pending sales and price cut percentages. So it's our third year of you doing the tracker. We're going into our third year. So that's exciting.
And I was like I said, I was wrong. I was looking for negative real home prices last year, only at a 2.33%, and I based mine off the supply and demand equilibrium, what the tracker is, right? The model is more important than the person or the forecast, so you get to understanding what it was. And what happened is that the seasonality softness period, the data started to get stronger as mortgage rates went down to 6%. So I knew where I lost my forecast because I could see it in the data lines before it's actually reported. This is why I always like to see people's models to see if they're legit or not. And we'll keep an eye on this going into spring.
That sounds good. That's thank you so much, Logan, for being on. We will talk to you again soon and see you in person in a few days. Thank you so much.